everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Shaggy and today I'm going to be doing my April wrap up. So as you know, I hate wrap-ups and I do have to leave for work soon, so this might be a little bit speedier than you're really expecting from me or expecting from anyone in a wrap-up, but I really do hate wrap-ups and I do have work. So we're just going to jump straight into this and all of the books that I read in April. I managed to read 7 books in April, which is okay. I'm actually 2 books in front of my Goodreads goal, which I don't know how is possible. But I read 7 books this month, which I'm very proud of. The first of which is one of 2 Cassandra Clare books that I read this month. And the first one is Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare, obviously, which is the second book in the Infernal Devices series. I can't really tell you much about this series because obviously it's spoilers upon spoilers for every other book. And I can't really talk about Cassie Clare books in wrap-ups without spoiling everything. But I really did enjoy this. I gave it a 4.5 and that's all you really need to know about this. I really do love this series. I adore it so much and I think you should definitely pick it up if you're considering it. The next book is a DNF and actually a really big disappointment for me in 2019 because I predicted it a 5 out of 5 stars and I ended up giving it 1. And this is Dumpling by Julie Murphy. Now I DNF'd this at page 190 for very many reasons. Before we get into those, we'll get into the plot first. This is basically about a girl called Willow Dean and she's obviously a plus size girl and she owns it and everything until she meets a guy called Bo and they both work at the same like diner thing and she starts to feel like she isn't worthy of him when they start dating and he basically treats her like shit. Willow Dean's mother basically runs the pageant and to kind of like boost her self-confidence, etc, etc, she enters into the pageant. It was kind of a joke at first, but now it turned into kind of a protest and a journey of self-love for Willow Dean in the fact that she's lost it because of this boy. Big red flag. Not only is her like self-worth like going downhill because of a boy a really big red flag, it's also the fact that she's known this boy for 5 seconds and they're literally like making out at the back of fucking dumpsters. It's not exactly fucking romantic at all. It's just not believable at all. They literally know each other for like 5 seconds and it's like, really? Are you fucking kidding me? The 2 main characters that were supposedly in love with each other and couldn't live without each other had 0 chemistry, nothing in common apart from the fact that they both worked at the same place. They hardly spoke to each other before they started like making out and shit. I just think they personally came out of nowhere. The dialogue scenes are very forced between them, very robotic, and I feel like the dialogue in general was really off. At first I thought it was on purpose to show how Bo, her love interest, was a little bit of a dick and she needed to move on from him, but then it also transferred into her other relationships as well and I was like, why is the dialogue so robotic? I also found Willow Dean to be just a fucking horrible person. She body shames literally everybody in the fact that they're too skinny, they're too small, they're too fat. You know, she just body shames everybody, like ignoring the fact that she is also insecure and the fact that this book was supposed to centre around being body positive. I know that's kind of the point in the fact that Willow Dean's not a very good person, she improves. But I was 190 pages into it, almost halfway through the entire novel, and she still hadn't shown any signs of getting better, and I feel like by halfway, your main character should kind of feel like, okay, I'm a shitty person, let's have a redemption arc. Otherwise, a redemption arc is going to be an arc, it's going to be a fucking swivel at the end. I didn't want to DNF this because I really wanted to see Willow Dean get better and to see the hype in the ending of this and watch the Netflix movie. I think I still might watch the Netflix movie, just not as quickly as I thought I was going to. Although I am glad of representation and the fact that Willow is plus size, she is a shitty person and I don't think that it was very good, okay? It just wasn't for me. Let's move on. The next book actually was for me in a very surprising way, and that is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I gave this a 4.75. There are some really big content warnings in this, such as alcohol and substance abuse, like drugs, alcohol, recreational drugs, everything like that, sex, abortion, and just all-round unhealthy and toxic relationships. So those things that trigger you, I would really, really be careful going into this book. Nevertheless, though, it is really good. This is basically about Daisy Jones and the Six, 2 separate entities at this point at the beginning. They're basically managed by the same person and Daisy isn't having so much success with her own albums and the Six are on the rise to becoming a national sensation, but they need one more thing. One thing is missing. And their manager deems that the thing missing from the Six and Daisy Jones's personas in the music industry is each other. And the characters come together to form the biggest band in the world and that is what they do. So this is told in the style of interviews, like it is told literally, there's no traditional text in this. It is literally all person speaking, new line person speaking, new line person speaking, with like directions and just stuff to do with interviews. And some people might not like this, but I personally really did. I didn't listen to this via audiobook, I did read it physically and I found no change in my experience. I actually really liked the interview aspect. It made me kind of visualise this as a documentary more than an interview. The last 100 pages were phenomenal. It was the best piece of literature I think I've read in a very long time. It all just pieced together really nicely. There were many plot twists that I personally didn't really see coming. I don't think authors let themselves be this raw and this authentic nowadays. It's very hard for someone to be 100% honest with their audience. I just found myself in all the characters and the fact that they're all like self-destructing and they're all on this wave of path of do I, don't I. And I think the reason why a lot of people like this and enjoy this because they can see themselves reflected into the broken characters that we still know and love. Female friendships are celebrated and they all kick ass together no matter what happens between a certain love triangle. Two of the main girls, two of the main characters still support each other and want the best for each other. There's never any girl hate or anything, which could have been really easily implemented into this story, but I feel like it was done really well and that was totally avoided. I think a lot of reading this book and reading books in general is reader's subjective experience. You go into books with your own personal cultural capital of what your life is like and how you're going to take some scenes, and I feel like this book is a very, very subjective take on people's own destructive paths, and whatever experience the reader has going into this is what they'll make out of the story, and I think that's absolutely beautiful. For it to manifest and mould itself depending on what reader's experience is and who's reading it and why they're reading it is absolutely phenomenal, and I absolutely loved it. Beware of the content warnings when going into this, but if you want to read it, then go ahead because it's absolutely phenomenal. If you like music, if you like interviews, if you just want to see yourself reflected in a novel, go ahead, it's great. The next book that I read in April was The Astonishing Colour of After by Emily X.R. Pan. This follows Lee, our main protagonist, whose mum has just died by suicide because she is very depressed and has been depressed for a very long time. Lee believes that her mum is speaking to her in terms of a bird and has been reincarnated into this big shiny red bird that no one else can see but her. Lee finds her mother's scribbled out suicide note and the only thing that is eligible is "I want you to remember." This immediately makes Lee and her family think of her Taiwanese heritage and how they haven't spoken to her grandparents, her mother's parents, for such a long time, and Lee thinks that her mother really wants her to remember her Taiwanese heritage and how her mother grew up in Taiwan. I gave this a 3.85, which I know is really specific, but it was so slow to begin with, but the last like 200 pages, the second half of the book was phenomenal and I could not ignore that fact. There are some really heavy subject matters in this, and come with that are some content warnings that need to be addressed. Obviously we have suicide, depression and PTSD, and just in general strained relationships, so very like family relationships that are very strained and unhealthy in a way and toxic because Lee's mother had some problems with their parents, and you kind of go on this journey of finding why their relationship was so strained and why they don't talk for a long time. So if that's something that's really triggering to you and really personal to you, be careful going into this book. At the beginning this was a little bit too whimsical for me because I don't really like overly whimsical books, but as the magical realism started to kick in, I really started to enjoy myself. I absolutely loved the difference in description because throughout this book Emily X.R. Pan describes moods and things, just describes things in terms of colours, and I thought that was a really, really original aspect to this book that I really, really enjoyed. In terms of representation, she delved into the topic of suicide, depression and mental health in general with really, really open eyes, and I feel like the representation of all of the things above that I've mentioned, PTSD, depression and suicide, were all done very well and very carefully. She didn't treat suicide as a bad thing, she treated it as like a tragedy and victims like a murder would, and I really, really appreciated that, being someone who has survived suicide attempts and has been, you know, suicidal and depressed in the past. This is actually technically an own voices novel because Emily X.R. Pan herself lost people to suicide. I think she's lost quite a few members of suicide, so she decided to write a book on what it means to lose someone to suicide rather than have suicidal thoughts and be a protagonist of someone who is suicidal. And I feel like the misrepresentation of what it feels like to lose someone to suicide, the guilt and the blame and stuff like that, it's really talked about in a weird way in the media, and I feel like this is a really good stepping stone in a way to talk about that openly and honestly and see that the person who has died by suicide isn't a horrible person. It wasn't the easy way out, and the fact that they just wanted things to end and their suffering to stop, and that is the only way they know how to do so. It can also be deemed as an own voices novel because Emily X.R. Pan is half American and half Taiwanese herself. There's even some Chinese and different other languages in this that the reader has to kind of be an active spectator to decipher, because I think it's a really nice aspect of the story. Something that isn't really talked about in this book and the reviews that I've seen in the past few years is the fact that post-traumatic stress disorder is one of the most prominent themes. So what I really liked about this book is the fact that even the reader at the end doesn't actually know if the bird is her mother or not, and we still don't really find out that because it's like kind of a whimsical thing. Is Lee just imagining things, or is she really seeing her mum? And not only that, the representation of PTSD was done this way as well, so we didn't actually know what was real and what was fiction. I think that's a really good testimony to how PTSD feels, because obviously you're reliving moments. I feel like that's a really good way of representing PTSD and what it feels like to be in a post-traumatic stress disorder kind of way, is reliving these moments, not being sure if they're true or if they're just imagination. So this was really good. It was really out there, it was really whimsical, but by the end I was really enjoying myself. It was a little bit slow, so it got a 3.85, not quite a 4 but not quite a 3 either. somewhere in the middle but higher end towards a 4 in my opinion. It was really good, I really enjoyed myself, and I almost gave it a 4, almost. The next book I also can't really talk about because it is a book right in the middle of a series, and that is Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. So this is basically the second book in the Illuminae files. As I literally just said, I can't really say much because of that, but all I am going to say is the fact that I gave this a 3 star. I did enjoy it, but I do feel like I enjoyed Illuminae a little bit more because of the characters. I just connected with Katie and Ezra a little bit more than this. I don't want to say too much just in case I spoil you for the first one. I'm pretty sure I said a big spoiler in the first one. So I'm not going to say much about this for the fact that I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as Illuminae. The next book is a reread of a favourite, and that is Scythe by Neil Schusterman. This was the bookmarked book club pick of the month of April. This obviously got a 5 out of 5 stars for me because I love it so much. I think I do have a spoiler-free review up on my channel of this that I did of Thunderhead and this, so if you want to go and see them, I'll link them above or down below. This is basically about a like dystopian far future world, but not that far because I honestly do see this happening. Age of majority is a thing of the past, and basically we've conquered death. Death is no longer a thing, there's no such thing as disease, and no one's basically dying. Avoid overpopulation and over-information of the Thunderhead. These people called Honourable Scythes have to go down into the like societies and glean people, aka kill people, but glean is more of a sophisticated way of saying it. Because the population is growing and growing and there's like an overload of information in the Thunderhead, the Scythes are looking to employ some more people. So Scythe Faraday marches his way into Citra and Rowan's life and they become his Scythe apprentices. What this entails is learning about the trade, doing things that the Scythes would do, and just basically being prepared to either be, you know, given a ring or be sent home. But in one of the conclaves, things spice up and it turns out that not all the Scythes are happy that Faraday has 2 apprentices when people don't even have 1. So there's a new competition in Rowan and Citra's life in terms of life and death and who will survive and who will be sent packing and basically be killed. There are some really big trigger warnings in this for death, obviously, and there's a bit of like self-cleaning, aka suicide in this, so please be careful about that when going into this. But if you can handle that, it's a really great read, and I really would recommend it to literally everybody who is watching this. It is one of my favourite series, just because Neil Schusterman flows so well. He is such a good writer, and the audiobook of this is absolutely amazing. I found a brand new way of consuming one of my favourite stories, and it was the best thing ever because the narrator was so good. I just feel like Neil Schusterman just grabbed the dystopian genre by its balls and changed it so much, because I feel like we've had a lot of dystopian lately, like the Hunger Games, Divergent. They're just kind of copies of each other. Like, yeah, we get it, the government's corrupt, but this death, okay, it's taking something that we know and a society that we love and turning on its head and questioning humanity, and I absolutely loved it so much. A lot of people do talk about the unnecessary romance in this, but I personally like the romance between Rowan and Citra because it isn't a relationship yet. I do feel like it could have been stronger for other people, but for me, I really enjoyed that aspect because it's almost like a love that got lost and the fact that it didn't quite make it, and I think we should have more of that in YA fiction. This was very postmodern, very up my street, and I very much enjoyed myself rereading it. If you haven't read this yet, then you fucking need to, because The Toll apparently comes out in November and my body is entirely ready. And the last book that I read in the month of April is the second Cassandra Clare book, and that is City of Lost Souls. Obviously, I can't say much about this either because it's the 5th book in a series and it will spoil a lot of things. But it is the 5th book in the Mortal Instruments series and I'm almost done with this now. I literally have 1 more in the series and then I'm finished. This one wasn't entirely my favourite at the beginning. I think it was very slow, so I gave it a 3.75 or a 4, I can't remember, but it wasn't any more than a 4. Although it wasn't my favourite Shadowhunter book, I did really enjoy it, and stepping into this world is honestly like coming home. If you haven't picked up the Mortal Instruments yet, all the internal devices, all the Dark Carpet is, start it because it's great and you should definitely be on the hype. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of April. There are 7 of them in total. I only had 1 reread, which I'm very proud of. I could have just reread all of my favourite books. I could have just reread Scythe all month, to be honest, because once I read it I was like, oh, I need more. I want to read Thunderhead, but I need to wait until The Toll. But thank you so much for watching this wrap up. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe. I make videos on this channel every single Tuesday-ish. Exam season is here, so please be patient with me. These videos might not always go up on time, but there will be a video at least every week, so you can count on that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time for a brand new video. Bye!
You've got a face for a smile, you know. A shame you're wasted when you're breaking me slowly. But I've got a world of chance.